welcome back. This is Captain Adams here. We're going over the Dark Rifle Way of War. We're going to cap off our video series on IO and the Planes of War, but we're going to start off with just IO and targeting and kind of what is it. Really, we just want to go through today, just going through a process to understand how to change your enemy's will to fight. We've talked about will to fight in every single video, and this is kind of a culmination, just kind of really where the rubber meets the road. That's what we're trying to get at in this video. Again, this video could be a whole class, multiple sessions. I'm going to try to boil it down for you today into just one concrete, as succinct as I can get it. I'll cover a lot of this stuff in a little bit, but I really want to just start off with a quick little quote that I think is going to get us right to the heart of why we're doing what we're doing. If we don't understand the why we want to fight the way we want to fight, why we want to target the will to fight, why do we want to go after the moral, the cognitive domain, then I don't think we need to watch this video. But if you do believe in fighting the enemy in a different way, rather than just slugging it out in a boxing match, this is what we're going for. So this quote here is from Napoleon Bonaparte, and it goes like this: "If you wage war, do it energetically and with severity. This is the only way to make it shorter and consequently less inhumane." Now I underlined a couple pieces here because I wanted to make sure that we emphasize these points, right? So in maneuver warfare theory, we're really talking about a couple key concepts. One of them is speed, right? So energetically, speed. Those are very similar terms, right? And that's what Napoleon Bonaparte, I believe, is trying to get at here. The second part we talk about here is severity. And this is just, aggression. This is just not giving up, just giving the enemy as much pain as you can. We don't want to do graduated violence like they did in the Vietnam War. We really want to just lay on as much hurt and as much pain as we can until the enemy loses their will to fight. We don't want to prolong the fight, because then that leads to the last bit, right? Where it says consequently less inhumane. So the longer that war stretches out for, the longer that it endures, the longer that it lasts, the more suffering that is involved. And from an American perspective, we want to be the upright, the moral citizens. We want to try to do the right thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But taking into consideration, right, it has to be done with speed and with lethality, right? Or energetically and with severity, right? Those are the only two ways you can make war less inhumane. You have to hit the guy hardest where he's not expecting it, you got to hit the guy hardest where he's not expecting it, and you got to hit him and just knock him down and just keep pummeling him until he gives up. You don't want to give him a chance to breathe. You don't want to give him a chance to get up. So that's kind of what we're going for today. So in previous videos, we've talked about the OODA loop. Colonel Broyles did several good videos on that. And I really want to tie that into this concept of targeting that we're going to go with here today. So if you're familiar with the OODA loop, we'll put a link here in the description or up here somewhere to kind of show you and link you back to that to kind of refresh your memory. But just a quick overview, the OODA loop is really the observe, orient, decide, and act. And so those are the four things that really make up that OODA loop. And so if you take that model and apply it to this spider web I have here, it's going to help us with targeting, right? So in the military mindset, when you hear the word targeting, a lot of people think indirect, direct, missiles, tomahawks, those types of weapon systems, right? From an IO perspective, there's many more ways that you can target something, right? There's kinetic effects, right? That's affecting something in the physical domain. And right, we've talked about that before in previous videos, that physical world. If I can touch it, if I can put my hands on it, if I can feel it, I can blow it up, whatever the case may be, that is the physical domain. And that's what most United States officers are comfortable with. That's what we're used to. That's what we've been trained on for many years. But if we look at this concept we've been developing over the last couple of video series, we talk about the information domain, right? So how do I target something in the information domain, right? So when we look at it from that perspective, we need to realize that there are many more tools in our toolkit in order to affect the enemy's cognitive or information domain as well as their cognitive domain. So we'll cover some of them in a little bit, but I want to just give you a quick example of like some of the methods of delivery, right? So we just went over some of those kinetic ones, right? And if you want to go talk to your nearest fires officer, your field artillery guy, a lot of them have a lot of experience in the targeting process. But from an IO perspective, these other aspects, they all tie into that targeting process. So you have things like public affairs, psychological operations, your combat cameras, senior leader engagements, key leader engagements, your civil affairs, your operational security guys, your military deception planners, your cyber magnetic activity soldiers, your electronic warfare soldiers, cyber soldiers. It could even be something as simple as just your PPP, like your presence, posture, and profile. How do your soldiers look, right? Are they in full kit? all the time? Do they have helmets? Do they look jacked up when they walk out the fence, right? Those are all important things. This all sends a perception, right? Perception is reality, right? And finally, just your security posture, and we'll cover that in a little bit. But I want to go over here today just really talking about this spider web, and just to kind of give an example. This is all fictitious, so I want to make sure that everybody realizes that if anything is on here that looks like too familiar, there's not my intent. But really today we want to talk about the enemy. His name is General Smith. So General Smith is a 3-star general. He's in charge of a brigade nearby. He's working, trying to take us out. And we really wanted to understand, how do we influence him from an informational side? How do we present this individual information that's going to change his beliefs, change his patterns, change what he believes about us as Americans, about NATO, about all the friendly forces we have around us, so that it changes his decisions, right? So we want to go back and look at things like, well, where did he grow up? What's his cultural background, his heritage, his religion, what's ethnicity does he have, and understand all of that which makes him him, right? We talked in previous videos about Russian identity, Chinese identity, things of that nature. I cannot understate it enough that most Americans, we neglect, or we totally underestimate the impact we can have by understanding somebody from their own foxhole, from their own perspective. We like to impart our Western beliefs and our Western values so often, but that is just the wrong approach. We don't want to fight them from our perspective. We want to fight them from within. We want to fight them from where it hurts the most, right? Where it's going to cut the deepest. So in this instance, we'll just take that as an example. So you've already done the research on it. Now this spider web here is really just depicting the avenues or the methods in which you can get information to General Smith. So this is obviously small scale, but you can grow it up and make it bigger for the larger targets. But let's just say he's got 5 main people that he works with every day in his life. They're the closest people to him. He's got his wife, he's got the G6, the G4, the 3, and finally the G2. Right? All of them have a different actor they play. He's got better relationships with others. Some folks he really only just converses with email. He doesn't really actually see the G6 that much. And maybe the G3, he's out forward more often than not, and they mostly talk on the radio a lot, right? So these are certain aspects that you can work with. And maybe there's a schism between the 4 and the 6. Maybe they're not really close friends. They don't really like each other. That could play an advantage to us, right? These are all things that we can start to paint the picture together that our S2 folks can provide us. Well, now let's take an example here, right? Say we know that General Smith, he is very susceptible to feeling underappreciated. Or maybe another example might be, he hates the idea that he would lose to an American. It would just infuriate him. It makes him so angry. He knows he's better. He's proven he's better. He's just an amazing person. So why don't we take that self-belief about himself and use it to his own disadvantage? Where we bring him into a situation where he overcommits, where he brings too much to bear, and he stretches himself thin in other areas, allowing us to use the maneuverist approach, hit him where he's weak, hit him from the flanks, hit him from the rear, hit him where he doesn't expect it, and we hit him hard so that he loses control and he loses all his forces. All right, so for example, when we take a look at this, right? So we realize that he's got his G2 folks, right? But he also has this fusion cell. As an IO, or just a targeteer in general, we need to realize that there's a time delay between when we present information versus when he will receive it. So if you look at this here, right, I just put a couple of examples. I know a lot of the doctrinistas out there are going to say there's many more, but for this, I just want to go over a couple ones here. So let's say, for instance, we know that he's primarily collecting through OSINT, some human, and then maybe some drone ISR assets. If we are able to present a picture of, through ISR collection, of force, like massive force being built up in a certain area, combine that with some rumors that are cycling around in the human domain, mix that in with some news articles, maybe get some of our nation state, our friendly allies, other newspaper articles, if we build relationships with them, to run a couple pieces on something that are maybe half-truths, we can then get that all funneled in the fusion cell. So we never send any one bit of information hoping it gets all the way through. We have to make them believe that they found it on their own. We can't just have them happenstance upon like, oh, this is the golden egg that we've been looking for. No. They need to have a piece here, and then they get a piece from here, and then they get a piece from here. And all of a sudden, it's like a game to them. They're putting this chessboard together, putting this puzzle together. And every piece that they get, it's reaffirming in their mind their preconceived notions. So once they generate that, He'll then send it up to the G2, and then he sends it on up to the general, and he reads his brief, right? And he's like, oh, American forces are being arrayed in such a fashion over in this area. That's what we want him to believe. Now, we know that most generals, they highly rely on their G3. So let's take a look at this individual here, right? So we know, for instance, that he has a drinking problem, right? We've seen this. Some of our intelligence has told us that he's a highly drinking problem. Additionally, he loves reading newspapers, but not just any newspapers, a certain set of newspapers. And we happen to have an influence on that newspaper. So again, we've already started to feed this mechanism over here to change his beliefs, to change his perceptions, right, through the S2 settings. What if we also reinforce that belief? Because again, this general, he's not just going to believe one person, but if 2 people say it, or if 3 people say the same thing, that's when you start to have doubts. It's when you start to have fear. It's when you start to change that will to fight, and it changes what your reaction would be. So we know he's got a newspaper problem. So maybe we want to discredit him, right? Or maybe we want to reinforce him. We could assist in his drinking problem. But maybe he's also got a food shortage with soldiers. What if we put some information out there that their food shortage is actually worse than it really is? Or we just spin a story of something different, right? Again, this is warfare. We're not trying to be the nice guys. We're trying to make this as energetic and with most severity as we can to make it less inhumane. So you go through this process, you make him believe a certain thing, and then he reports that up to General Smith. Now you replicate that again and again with the 4, the 6, so on and so forth, however many avenues of approach that you get into here, right? How many times can you do it? Let's take, for instance, his wife. Now, this is a little far-fetched, I know, but just bear with me for a second. Say his wife has some Brazilian friends. They're just really good friends. They hang out all the time. She goes on trips to Brazil and keeps in contact with them all the time. Say one of these folks happens to be really good allies with America. What if, hypothetically, you get those Brazilian friends to talk about what they've heard about the American buildup and what they've heard about certain force dispositions? Well, you know she's going to talk to her husband. So if you tell her that, it'll then reinforce his belief from all of these other avenues, right? So just continually change that information, continually changes and starts to work on his cognitive belief. Then again, you work on the G6, the G4, so on and so forth. I won't try to waste too much more time, but I think you're getting at the picture. I think you're starting to understand that you have to let them piece the puzzle together, so that way he builds his own bias towards it. And again, we do that with recognition of what's his cultural background. What's he actually going to believe? What's he actually committed to? What's he actually a devout person of? What is going to make him tick? And so once you understand that, you present that information to him so that he believes he's come to his own conclusion. So once you've gone through this process and you've put that in there, you're doing targeting at a different level, right? We can target with physical weapons all of the time. But from a maneuverist standpoint, we want to bring all of our available resources to bear. We don't want to just leave it hanging. So that's why we go from all of these different things. That's why we want to combat, not only just in the physical domain, but we want to combat in the information domain, through social media, through newspaper, through articles. You know, the public affairs, the PSYOPs, those guys, they're all tools in the toolkit that can be used for certain aspects to bring, you know, doubt, discord, discontent, right? Because you might affect him, but what are the second and third order effects as well, right? If you're threatening food shortages or talking about food shortages or reinforcing that pre-existing belief by just continually talking about it, it's also going to have an effect on the soldiers, right? If the soldiers are like, when am I going to get my next meal? You know, or maybe you just give up, the food's really bad, or maybe it just, you know, maybe being here is not the right thing for me, right? So you reinforce those concepts again and again and again, right? So that's kind of where we're at. And maybe you want to present an appearance of like, hey, you mess with us, the Americans, we're going to take you out and we're going to beat the living crap out of you until you cannot stand. And that's the perception we want to have. And so that's kind of where we work at, right? So all of these different areas. So as you spiderweb this all out, think about this for yourself as what are the different methods of delivery that we can use in the targeting process beyond just the traditional kinetic effects. So with all that, I just want to say hooray skill. I hope you guys enjoyed this video series. If you want some more content from us, let us know, put it in the comments, like it, subscribe. Otherwise, I just hope you guys have a good day and we'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.